Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy ARDOIN. We have a great hour of conversation up. It's been a big week here in Harris County. The Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association has been really busy with all the news going on, and we've got a great guest lined up this week. But as always, my co-host here with me, JULIO VELA. JULIO, what's going on, my friend?
Same old, same old.
I'm disappointed.
Good fights.
You didn't wear orange.
Oh no, but
I did.
But I'm still calling it. I'm still calling it. Horns up, horns up. And Cam's going over Denver tonight. Yeah,
it was a great opening weekend of football. NFL starts tonight, but we're not here to talk about that. And JULIO and I, of course, are Longhorns. But our guest tonight, he is an Aggie. We won't hold that against him, ladies and gentlemen.
I am an Aggie fan. My son is the Aggie. I am a season ticket holder.
John Denholm is here, ladies and gentlemen. He is a criminal defense attorney with the law firm of Music & Music. He was a law enforcement officer for 31 years, 27 of those with the Harris County Sheriff's Office right here in Houston, Texas. And then for some reason, I don't know why, he decided to go to law school and join us. But be that as it may, we're going to spend the next hour talking with him about all these crazy shenanigans that have been going on. And John, it's good to have you here. I'm glad to finally get you on. You and I have enjoyed some Greek pizza over
right
lunch.
Down at Theo's.
Yeah, had some good times. But I'm glad to get you on here because I think you're going to be pretty knowledgeable to talk about some of this stuff this week.
It has been an interesting week.
It has been a very interesting week. For those who have been living under a rock and have not been following the mainstream media, the saga at Precinct 4 and the destruction of evidence continues on, and the plot thickens, guys. So this week, we get the constable's address to the media, so to speak. Constable Herman has finally come out and really started addressing the media in the camera. And giving his statements, out in public, so to speak, as opposed to just releasing the press releases that he has in the past. And I got to tell you, the story is just, it's unraveling. I don't know where, there's just no consistency. I mean, Herman says that they alerted the DA's office. The DA's office says they didn't alert us, but Devin Anderson says I knew as early as January, which is in contradiction to the first reports we had when this all went down, which said they knew. I think Jeff McShann said, well, we knew in April. Then we heard it could have been as early as March. I don't know what the truth is here, guys. I mean, the reality is, the truth is over 20,000 pieces of evidence were destroyed, 142 cases have been dismissed so far, and nobody seems to have their story straight.
Well, obviously, for some reason, they didn't want this thing seen light of day. Without getting into any privileged information, I do know the district attorney's office was actively investigating this in March. And so for them to suddenly send a shotgun email out in August, that's just incredible to me. And it indicates to me that the district attorney's office has gotten pretty dysfunctional.
So the district attorney's office finds something out in March, April.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you expect them to do?
I expect them right then to, say, hold on, we've got a problem out here in Precinct 4, so we can ascertain the scope of the problem. We need to just make everyone be aware that we have evidentiary issues. And it's just like if you're really going to work up your case on the defense side, depending on the severity of the offense, you need to go out the property room and look at the evidence. And they should have said all these courts have investigators, and if they're getting ready to proceed on these Precinct 4 cases, I don't expect the prosecutor per se to go, but I tell the investigator, hey, go out and make sure that evidence is there. And if he reports back the evidence is missing, well, first we've identified the case, and now we got to try to get a handle on it, but that would just raise it up even more that all these cases could possibly be snake bit, and we need to proceed with caution. It appears to me it's like we're trying to keep this under wraps. We're trying to get as many pleas as possible, but now we can't control it. Now it is coming out because you had the one attorney filing the motion and going public. So now, all of a sudden, we send an email out to all the prosecutors. And, it's you can't manage by memo. You can't manage by email. I supervised for 19 years. And both in the constable's office and the district attorney's office, to me, this indicates a systemic problem with supervision in that there's no oversight.
But where's the failure? Is it with the Precinct 4? Is it with the district attorney? Is it with the courts? I mean, where's the miscommunication?
Okay, first, maybe we ought to just kind of tell people how the evidence works in that. So you're out as a patrolman.
You mean the intake of evidence?
Right, you know, run you through it real quick. You get out here, you arrest somebody, and you get a pistol. What you're supposed to do is while you're doing the booking and you get them tucked in, then you put a tag on that and you would put it in a property locker out at the substation. And then every morning on Monday through Friday, you'd have the deputy doing the mail run. And it's what you call one of the old man jobs. And so he takes all the evidence, all the narcotics, all that kind of stuff, he loads it up and he goes out. He would take the pistol down to our property room, which was at 601 Lockwood, and he would log all that stuff in, making sure the chain of custody is good. And then narcotics would go out to the medical examiner's office, or if you had a large amount, you know, we'd put them in the property room and just a sample to the ME's office. And then once it's under their care, custody, and control in the property room, that doesn't come out of the property room unless it's removed for trial. And a lot of times when you got a subpoena from the DA's office and they told you, hey, Denholm, we're getting ready to go on that pistol case, can you go over and pick up the gun? Yes. And you would bring it over and it'd still be wrapped in the bag. They wouldn't want you opening it till you're getting ready to fire up. After that, of course, if it's admitted, the court reporter keeps it. But if it's not or the case pleads out, it's put back in the property room. Then you're supposed to do, when all these cases are cleared, you're supposed to do a property disposition sheet. And you put, you know, no charges, return to owner, pled guilty, item is contraband, whatever. And then they take those and they get the items and they either destroy them or they auction them. I mean, if you've got TVs and stereos and stuff like that, that's supposed to go down to purchasing, and Harris County auctions it off, and the money goes into the general fund. Weapons, narcotics and that, they would either incinerate them out at the ship channel where they'd literally throw them in a blast furnace out there, or they used to take pistols out and dump them in the Gulf of Mexico. But they did. But you do control that stuff. And so what happens is, like in Precinct 4, is apparently it sounds like in Hess's defense, he was kind of overwhelmed.
Well,
you know,
but here's the thing, overwhelmed, I don't understand how one guy, for 9 years, the allegation is that he alone destroyed over 21,000 pieces of evidence over a 9-year period. I mean, is that, in your mind, John, having been a law enforcement officer, know how evidence is booked, how the destruction of evidence process goes, is that even realistically possible for him to have done this all by himself?
Somebody had to know. Somebody, you know, either told him to clear that property room out, get it in order, or whatever. I find it hard to believe that you're going to destroy that much evidence over that long a time and no one has a clue. I mean, at some point, it's like you've got this agency, and I think Precinct 4 is probably close to 300-400 employees, and you've got all these pieces of property coming in, but we're not seeing any disposition sheets. We're not seeing any trips to court to get destruction orders. Nobody's taking stuff down to purchasing. I mean, and this is what I was saying about supervision. At some point, Hess has a supervisor, whether sergeant, lieutenant, or captain, and it's incumbent on them. They need to go walk in there and see if his house is in order. I was reading in the one thing, they had over $100,000 cash in a filing cabinet.
I mean, this seems to me like, if you were to equate it for all our movie fans out there, it seems like A Few Good Men. Who ordered the code red?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Who ordered the destruction of this? Because I just don't see this guy. I mean, he was just a deputy.
Well, who was
just a
who was in
deputy.
charge of Precinct 4 through a lot of this?
I know. Well, our current sheriff.
The Sheriff Hickman.
Yeah.
Look, call me conspiracy crazy, but, you know, Hickman becomes top dog. Somebody goes down. A bunch of evidence goes missing. Sounds like a movie to me.
I mean, John, you said they would take stuff to the incinerator.
Right.
I mean, it seems like before you burn something, and it's completely destroyed. I mean, this isn't like we put it out in the trash can and, I put that in the dumpster, we might still have a chance to go get it kind of thing. I mean, this is gone.
Right. You get rid of it, it's supposed to be witnessed, and you should file a supplement that the stuff was destroyed.
I mean,
apparently there are, though, right? There are supplements or documentation that things were destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, does that absolve maybe some foul play that was involved?
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Is stuff was taken to the incinerator and burned. It strikes me that this guy couldn't have done that without somebody signing off on him saying, "Okay, yeah, that stuff's good to go burn it. Just get rid of it," because that seems like such a total destruction that you would have to have somebody above him say, "Oh yeah, it's okay. Go take that to the."
Well, and that's what I'm saying. At some point, somebody has to be aware of what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's somebody locked away in a cave. I mean, you see the guy coming and going. Is he taking a truckload of stuff out? I mean, or where is all this stuff going? And I think, when there's a change of the boss, you get a new sheriff or whatever, you're actually supposed to inventory the department. I remember we were laughing because when Thomas came in and we were doing an inventory, we had 2 cars we couldn't find.
They ended up in the buy-in, huh?
Well, one turned out to be an Oldsmobile Sierra that was inadvertently
Councilman
entered.
Kubosh will find it.
Yeah. It was inadvertently entered as a county vehicle, but it was really a test vehicle from General Motors. But just stuff like that. But they're supposed to inventory it, and it's kind of suspicious that right shortly after a changing of the guard, now all this stuff turns up missing. I don't know that they did an inventory as much as it's kind of like we need this thing cleaned up. And then you start looking, and these cases are 9 and 10 years old. Complaints have moved. Phone numbers aren't good. And, you're dealing with human beings, and sometimes they sit there and go, well, I can go through all this paperwork, or nobody cares. It's a misdemeanor weed case from 2007. Nobody cares.
Right.
In all your experience, I mean, did you see? You'd probably be or hear of, just either incompetence or just blatant disregard of what they're supposed to do. Did you see any of that, or just kind of like, is this has history repeated itself, or is this something that
we had issues over the years in the property room. I remember one time some stuff had turned up where they hadn't gone and got the destruction orders. It was like somebody was taking it on themselves that nothing's going to happen with this case. And understand that before the constables, quote, got into the police business back in the 70s when the commissioners and Jack Hurd got sideways, sheriff's office been open since 1837. And I mean, they had stuff back there. I can remember where Sergeant took us back there one time, was showing us, with stuff like Tommy guns from the 40s that had been seized. So, at some point somebody says, everybody connected with this case is dead, but you still have to follow the rules.
Right.
And, I really do think that because of this divided law enforcement, and in a way the commissioners pit the agencies against each other so nobody can get strong enough to maybe have a commissioner beat at the ballot box. And they're just not set up to be what I call full serve, where you have a fully functioning 24-hour property system, or where you've got enough people where you can go around and hit the substations and pick up the property and go dispose of it, and they just keep piling the work on some guy. And he does it.
You think it's politics that'll stop the funding for that from happening, or what do you think's the problem?
I think county law enforcement has gotten to be darn near dysfunctional. I mean, they keep trying to make everybody work together, but when everybody's competing for budget dollars, it just doesn't happen. And we've outgrown the politics. It's a county of over 4 million people, and we've got 10 law enforcement agencies in the county. We've got the fire marshal, the sheriff, and the 8 different constables. So you've got and I understand they're finally consolidating dispatch, but right now you've got 9 different agencies dispatching. Why? And they should all be in one room. Mm-hmm. And so you've got 9 different property setups. 9 different accounts at VMC, 9 different color cars, 9 different sets of decals, you know. I mean, well, the cars are all white, but everybody's got to have their special stuff on there. And I mean, you get to where it's like, well, who do I call? I'm out here, there's a contract, but the station's over here, and you know, and so they really need to consolidate. And of course, none of the constables are civil service. And in my opinion, the sheriff's civil service is a joke. I mean, I've got a transcript with one commissioner when he upheld a guy's firing going, well, I think we're losing a good officer, but it's not my job to second guess the sheriff. And it's exactly your job. So there are all kind of powerless. You think when you're a peace officer in an at-will assignment, how can you really jump up and say this is a big problem? Because, you know, these guys have families. They got to feed them in that. And so how do you jump up when you have absolutely no protection? The constable can call you in and he can go, Deputy ARDOIN, you know what? You help me out in that election, I'm going to make you a captain. And boom, you're a captain. But same thing, Captain so-and-so, you kind of made me look bad on TV. I'm going to fire you, and that's it. And there's no appeal. So a system like that, is it a shock that it's dysfunctional?
No. Not really.
How would a situation like this have been happening back in the old days when you were there? What do you think?
Well, first, the old days ain't that long ago. But I mean,
Why you got to refer to it like?
Well, I'm saying, I mean, the guy has a wealth of knowledge.
You got to get in a DeLorean and go back and see
well,
what happened.
I'm asking back, and you know, I mean,
but you mean if we suddenly missed 21,000 pieces? I got to think, you know, if Holmes was a DA, that he'd have probably been all bug-eyed crazy about it. And I also think that he wouldn't be asking the constable to hire an independent auditor. It's like, hey, you've got all these investigators, the district attorney's office, all these investigators, send them out there. You know, you got these white-collar guys, and I mean, this is really a paper chase. All you really need is a file clerk out there, you know, and you just start with, hey, we pick this thing up, we look at the case number, we check the case number, now we put a barcode on it, and we take you know, we keep track of our stock, just like at Walmart. But it's going to be very tedious. But the thing is, obviously, this is a hot-button issue, so you're just going to have to put up with it. You're going to have to put 15, 20 guys on it, and you're going to have to stay on them and say, hey, I want this done in 30 days. I want every item cataloged. I want to know where every piece went. I want to know exactly what's missing, and I want to know it by September 30th, or I'm going to skin somebody. You know?
We are talking with John Denholm right here live on the air on Reasonable Doubt. It's about 8:15 right now. We're going to open up our phone lines in about 15 minutes. 713-807-1794 is the number. We also have Twitter up. Hit us up at HCCLA_TV. Send us your questions and comments right here live on the air. You know, you say, John, about the investigation and sending the DA's office out to investigate this, but I've always thought, here's the problem. You're sending the people who are just as complicit in covering up the crime to investigate it. At what point, I mean, I see a lot of people, and we'll get into this. I mean, HCCLA this week has come out, of course, the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association has come out this week in response to this. President Tyler Flood has sent out a letter asking for, and Paul Morgan, whose client was dismissed, both sent letters asking the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate. But setting aside any federal investigation, whether or not there's jurisdiction to do that or not, why do we not utilize special prosecutors, the Texas Rangers, or even the AG's office to come in? I mean, it just seems when the DA's office didn't even make Brady disclosures about this destruction of evidence, should they be the ones really investigating what's going on at Precinct 4?
No, I mean, you make a valid point, and it is. You would think with, we got 12,000 lawyers in this town, that they could find a couple to make special prosecutors. And like I said, it's not hard. I mean, you could get some inventory people who are experts in that, and they'd be paid under some special funds, maybe some of those seizure funds that the district attorney's office never seems to want to spend, and have them check through it. But, you know, when you're talking about that, Jimmy, you actually raised a point that I think the district attorney's office and law enforcement has gotten entirely too cozy. And they forget that they are not law enforcement, that they are the lawyers for the state of Texas and their job is to seek justice. And I was stunned, when I started practicing, and you got a case and it's a dog case. I mean, you can't make this thing. And you tell the prosecutor and you go, hey, you can't make this case. What are we doing? I can't dismiss it. Why? I got to call the cop and he won't let me. And I go, for God's sakes, man, you're a lawyer. Why are you asking him about the elements and what it takes to make this case?
Well, and he's not your client. You don't represent the police officer.
And that's it. They forget that's not their client. If when I was working in courts, I can remember, and especially I remember Jack Millen, who has since passed, but he was a great prosecutor and he's a good defense lawyer. I mean, he's a good guy all around. And we'd have 50 cases on the desk in the morning in County Court 5. And when they packed up at 11:30 or noon, they had 10 or 15 left. A third of them got dumped. A third got pled, and the rest were either you need another setting or you're going to set them for trial. But the chiefs had the authority to dump the case. And if something happened, they'd hear about it, but you can't, you can't take away all their authority. That's a basic tenet of supervision. If I'm going to have responsibility for this docket, if I'm going to have responsibility to train these guys and teach them how to do it, I got to have the authority to run it. I mean, why do you have to call the officer? The way I learned about the affirmative link was I thought it was a pretty good dope case, So, and the guy had a prior and all that, so I wanted to run it up, see if he pled initial setting. I run it up, DISM in gyms. I'm like, damn, So I called down there. And I said, hey, man, why'd this thing get dismissed? And he said, because there was no affirmative link. And it's like, affirmative link? And he said, yeah, let me tell you how this works. But they didn't call and ask me. They didn't call and say, hey, you kind of did this. And they certainly didn't call and try to suborn perjury and say, hey, what you need to say is make sure, maybe you forgot or something, but you need to say this. I mean, they just dumped it. And if you had a question, you called, they'd tell you how you made a better case. I don't see a lot of that. Speaking
of suborning perjury.
Well, let's save that till we get through this stuff, because that's a whole other issue we got to get into. But I mean, it's just been a hell of a week around here,
It's one after the other, man. I just don't see how things haven't been addressed sooner, and there's just more issues just bubbling to the top.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Now we've got the defendant, Paul Morgan's client and Emily's client. He's now suing the county. It's come out. I mean, so now you've potentially opened up the county. 142 cases have gotten dismissed. You're going to have untold cases that are going to have to be reversed potentially on writs that come back. I mean, over 1,000 cases are being reviewed. I mean, you've now potentially exposed the county to millions of dollars in liability. And I'm not commenting on what the facts are because I have no idea really what the facts of this guy's case. I haven't even gotten to read the petition yet. I just saw the headline that he's sued. But let's take a scenario in which, juries do find that these people's civil rights have been violated in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's just, you've now exposed the county to a multitude of lawsuits, millions of dollars in potential damages. I mean, it just goes on and on, in addition to the untold human factor on this that you've had.
Well, do y'all think anybody will ever see a dime from this? I mean, there's some lawsuits going on. Let's say all 100 of them sue. I mean,
realistically?
What do you think?
But here's the thing. I think potentially, and this is just my guess, but there's probably a nuisance value to make this go away, to also not have to expose the county to huge discovery on this. So there may be some nuisance value. Legally, could these guys, make the case? I don't know. I really don't know. When you, for instance, with Paul and Emily's client, I mean, he ran up to trial, the case got dismissed. He's going to have to show some damages. I'm not sure what the damage model is. I'm not sure what he can show. But if you're the county representing if you're the lawyers representing the county, whether it's going to be the county attorney's office or whether they're going to hire outside counsel, but if you're looking at it, you're thinking, geez, we've got parallel criminal investigations going on. Can we really afford to have civil discovery going on in hundreds, possibly thousands of cases?
Bankrupt the county, man. What about our potholes?
Yeah.
Well, the county has always had the theory, and I speak from experience. Both I was sued a couple times when I was a deputy. In fact, I even stood trial in federal court once.
Really?
And yeah, so and
You beat it?
I tell you, when you're signing a client, you can say, "I feel your pain, brother. I know what it's like to be a defendant." But oh yeah, so but their theory is if we start paying these things, it just encourages. So if you're going to sue the county, they're going to dig in. And then, and we did a deal in 1992. This is where I first met Steve Clapper. We worked on an officer-involved shooting where we ended up putting the officer in jail for murder. It's like the first on-duty shooting where a guy got convicted of murder.
First and last?
In like 50 years. I mean, so, but they go to federal court. And, you know, they win $6-7 million. It goes up to New Orleans on appeal, and the county goes, hey, it's not our policy and practice to murder civilians. We've got a policy that says they have to obey the law. He violated the policy, which lets them off the hook.
Right.
And we used to sit around when I was lieutenant, and we'd be dealing with what we would call sometimes the daily disaster. And I would remind people sometimes, fortunately, we have no statutory duty to be competent. But I had one captain tell me, and it was a good example. He said, personnel is an inexact science. Even Jesus Christ only got 11 out of 12 right. So, you know, you got 4,000 employees and somebody screws something up, the county's not going to be liable on that. Because you're going to have to show it's policy and practice.
Right.
And I guarantee.
But what if it was policy and practice?
Oh, I know.
Precinct 4
but see,
the evidence.
You know, this is going to be.
They may be able to show that going back 9 years on this consistent destruction.
I guarantee they're trying to throw this kid under the bus. Mm-hmm. And, you know, everybody, all his supervisors are going to be like, Hess, he worked for us. You know, it's just like
Who's Hess? What?
I don't know.
Isn't that an oil company in the Northeast or something?
Yeah.
So the interesting thing I saw his lawyer, and I don't know his lawyer at all. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing to me was that his lawyer was already coming out and saying, "Oh no, yeah, you know, no direction came from Constable Herman. We're not alleging that or anything else." Kind of like you're taking the blame on your client all the way.
No, nothing to do with anything like that. No. Is the constable Precinct 4, were they appointed, right? They weren't.
No, they're elected. He was.
Right, but this
he
was
was
him.
Appointed to fill Hickman's slot, but then he stood election, ran the primary, and I think he's appointed.
Wow.
Well, no, I'm sorry.
Close.
And he stood election. He's unopposed. That's what I'd say. I think he's unopposed in the November election.
Well, it's a Republican stronghold up there in Precinct 4.
Well, with all the stuff that's going on, I don't think anybody's going to be opposing him. Because I'd be afraid of going missing if you go up against him, okay? You're going to go missing just like the rest of that evidence went missing down in the Gulf of Mexico, all right?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
We're gonna open up our phone lines, ladies and gentlemen. 713-807-1794 is the number. Of course, we also have Twitter up at HCCLA_TV. Let's. You got to be kidding me.
No.
I'm not going to read that on the air, but that is hilarious. John just passed me a note, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not going to share it because I don't want to open up that can of worms, but it fits in our next line of discussion. So this week, let's call it the toxicologist, veterinarian. What do we call her, Julio?
Dr. Fesselwork. The curious case of Dr. Fesselwork, which, by the way, Dr. Fesselwork, the last client that you came and testified against my client, I walked him because I knew the stuff you were saying was bogus and I didn't believe a word you said, and you're lucky that I beat the system that day and walked my guy. But the things that you are doing, Dr. Fesselwork, are disgusting.
So Julio's anger aside, this week we got the notice, September 6th is the date of the notice that went out from the Harris County District Attorney's Office, informing the defense bar that Dr. Fessewerk Gual of the Harris County Institute of Forensic Scientists may have testified in past trials that she received her Master's of Science degree in toxicology when, in fact, she received her Master's of Science degree in physiological sciences with coursework and research in toxicology. A little bit different. In fact, a lot different. To say that you are have a master's degree in science of toxicology as opposed to physiological sciences. I mean, that is a huge difference. And I've seen some transcripts that have been floating around today that people have been passing around where she's been qualified as an expert in this. I mean, this is just unbelievable that the DA's office would put her up, sponsor her testimony, and qualify her as an expert. This is crazy.
So, to get this straight, what does it even matter? I mean, why? So she's an expert, and why is it such a big deal?
Because she's testifying in DWI cases as an expert in toxicology.
Okay, I was just making sure I wasn't in the twilight zone. The district attorney is putting up an individual who is testifying that she's an expert in certain fields of toxicology, when in fact, the only toxicology she has training in relates to animals.
Drunk animals.
Drunk animals.
I never arrested one. I did get punched out by a monkey once.
I do think we have a picture of the donkey that she tested the rectal temperature.
I don't think our producer wants to put it up.
I think we have a picture. I think
he's a protester.
I think he wants to say something. There he is. That is the donkey that Dr. Fesselwerk did her research study on. Dr. Fesselwerk.
I mean, John, if we did something like this as a defense lawyer, if you put a client up who said, you know, under the penalty of perjury, these are my qualifications, they'd have our bar card.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what was that one guy?
If we knew.
I'm trying to remember. He was some doctor out of Alabama that testified on some intox manslaughters, and they went through his background like he was being vetted for the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And they found where he had lied about one thing in his resume. And I don't know if Tarrant County tried to file ag perjury on him or something. But if it's a defense witness, they go through with a fine-tooth comb. And, of course, if it's a state's witness, it's just, hey, you know, it's okay.
It's akin to the movie with Matthew McConaughey when he puts on the defense expert in his case. I think it's
Lincoln lawyer?
Not the Lincoln lawyer, the old school one, the with Samuel Jackson.
Oh.
You're damn right. I hope he burns in hell. Time to kill. So they put their own expert on, and as we all know, when an expert takes the stand, the jury is hearing what they believe would be an expert in a particular field. But it turned out that particular expert had a precarious history which discredited their testimony. And it's, in that case, they found out during the jury trial, but what effect does it have when the jury doesn't know about it? And what's their remedy?
Well, I mean, the first juries, I mean, we did a DWI, and I thought I did a real good job on DPS chemist. And we get in the back, and the jury convicted the guy. And they said, we had a real problem with that blood, but you didn't prove she was wrong. You know, because she got up there and said, I have a master's in chemistry, and I have all this training in the effects of alcohol on humans and stuff. And, you know, and I got her to talk about, well, what is this little spike here? Oh, I don't know. We've never figured that out. It's in every test. I said, so the instrument's been just showing up some anomaly for years? You never figured it out? No. Any idea what it could be? We think it might be some petroleum product. And I said, petroleum in a breath alcohol or a blood alcohol sample? And then later, I had her in another case. I asked her, did you ever testify that was petroleum? She goes, no. You impeach her with the transcript. She goes, oh, I don't remember saying that.
And,
And nothing, and no flags go up with the district attorney's office because we're all in this together. Our job's to get conviction, not to get to the truth of a matter.
do you remember anything? I mean, you've worked in the courthouse for years, as you've been a law enforcement officer for years. You've been a defense lawyer for years. Do you remember any other stories that come close to something like this? Have you seen an expert testify to all kinds of things?
Well, I mean, you see them, but I haven't seen where one got caught puffing that bad.
Here's the problem that I see in this, is that the perjury laws that are on the books honestly have no teeth. They're rarely used for prosecution. At most, they are put into some sort of maybe a findings of fact and conclusions of law, both on the criminal and the civil side, where a judge may find that they believe that a witness has committed perjury because they find their testimony uncredible, and a judge may make reference to that this witness committed perjury. But nobody ever acts on that. And so it's almost as if they can do this and people can get up on the stand and lie. And we've seen tons of instances of people lying about their qualifications, not just in court, but lying to get jobs, lying to get, appointments in federal cabinets. I mean, we've seen all sorts of instances here within the last 5 to 7 years, I would say, a real explosion, I think, of people misrepresenting their educational background, misrepresenting their qualifications. And at some level, when they get fired, there's a consequence for that. But in terms of what we see in our courts, these are toothless laws. Nobody enforces it. The DA's office doesn't charge people with perjury, and so there's no penalty for it.
But that's a problem. I don't know that it's in the laws as much as it's not enforced.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. We had a DWI, and on the video starts where she's doing the walk and turn and one leg stand. There's no HGN on video, no stop on video. Well, I know that when you turn the lights on, the camera actually backs up 30 seconds. So you'll see the lights come on. So I'm like, where is this? So we do discovery, and I get the custodian in and make him search the hard drive. And what it is the officer had stopped the video and then started the video to create 2 separate files, and then told them only to archive 1 file for that. Now, what happens is, so I got the officer on cross, and I say, hey, did you create 2 separate files? Yeah. So you edited the video. Well, I don't know that I edited it. And I said, okay, the first part, the stop, where, you said she did this, this, and this, and of course the video shows that she didn't. You concealed that by not archiving it and breaking up the file. And he goes, yes. I go, so you concealed evidence? And he goes, yeah. I go, you concealed evidence in a criminal case? And he goes, yeah. And I had to laugh because Joanne's about to pull my arm off. Fewer, many. And I go, have you done that on fewer, many occasions? And he goes, oh, I'm sure it's not the first time.
Oh my gosh.
I'm waiting for the judge to go, time out.
You need to get a lawyer.
Let me read your rights. I'm waiting on the prosecutor to go, Judge, we're stopping. I got a motion to dismiss. I had to make another setting. They never did anything. And of course, this was in 2011. We had a different district attorney, but here's the problem. We got a call 2 weeks ago, and somebody said, we heard you have a transcript on this guy. And we said, yeah. So we sent it to this other attorney, and he confronted the prosecutor with it. And they said, oh, that's years ago. That don't mean nothing. So this guy's still out testifying. They have no sanctions. They claim all the time they have a blacklist where if you've been found to be untruthful, they won't take charges. But until when they're at intake and you call and you go, hey, this is Julio, and I got a load of dope, and they go, no, we're not taking it. Until they start doing that and actually putting some sanctions on people for that, nothing's going to change. And same thing when you've got an expert that lies, until they file perjury, where everybody's going to sit up and go, ooh, they're serious.
Well, who makes the call?
Or the DA makes the call.
Well, but also the judges too. I mean, we've talked about on this program about how they're the gatekeepers of this stuff.
Right.
And until they sit down and say, you know what, no, that person has been found uncredible before, And they shut this stuff off. And you know what? They need to start issuing sanctions, frankly,
Yeah.
on this. They have the power to do it. I guarantee you, if they slap a $5,000 monetary sanction on a DA who sponsors this kind of testimony, you think people are going to do that again?
Well, and I had a motion to suppress, and the guy's reason for the stop was he sees 2 kids coming out of the woods. Well, that's not against the law. So, and that's a whole thing. I did this, and I found this, I found a little weed in that. So I'm looking through the state's file. We're getting ready to go to trial, and I always go look at it one more time. And you see notes just a week before trial, and the prosecutor had written community caretaking. You know, March 9th talked to arresting officer by phone, and then puts community caretaking. So she takes him through the probable cause. Now it's community caretaking. I thought this kid was sick and all that kind of stuff. And I got the officer to admit that the first time he heard about community caretaking was after the prosecutor called him. So, but again, this comes out in front of a judge. And you would think these judges, since most of them are former prosecutors, would pick up the phone and say, hey, Madam District Attorney, let me tell you what just happened over here. You got a real problem with this guy. You need to fix this. Mm-hmm. And nothing, it's just, you know, you got some, you get a good fair trial, but there's too much brother-in-law stuff down there.
Well, you know, and instead you have the district attorney putting judges in their campaign ads. I mean,
Right.
I mean, that's an issue. Do you think it's, do you think with this upcoming election, either of you, do you think that there's going to be some shakeup as far as it being a Republican kind of stronghold at the courthouse? You think some Dems are going to come in? Or not? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, you read these polls that are coming out here. I don't think either one of these candidates are anybody's dream choice. And so the question is, what's going to happen? I mean, who's going to come out en masse for straight ticket voting, which is historically what's happened here in Harris County. But it was interesting. I saw a thing that really broke it down for you and showed how many people there are in this country. That if you take out the people who are not eligible to vote, you know, children, convicted felons, all the people who just, you take that out and there's what, 380 million people in this country. About 170 million of them are not eligible to vote, okay? Mm-hmm. So
Right.
you whacked off almost, you know, over half the people in the country who, so you're down to half of the eligible voters, right? So you look at who voted in the primary to get these people. The people who vote in the primaries are only registered Republicans and registered Democrats. Mm-hmm. And that's a very small fraction of the other, you know, 110 million people who are left and eligible to vote. I mean, you're talking about less than 5% on each side who actually voted in the primaries that chose these two candidates. So honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't, because you've got a bunch of people.
I think you're probably going to see a lot of Democrats elected, and it's not so much whether it's Hillary or Trump. Although I remind people, in the presidential race, the Democrats have taken Harris County like the last 4 times.
Right.
But you know, when Adrian Garcia ran for sheriff, he pulled 600,000 votes, and he did it twice. He was the only office holder ever to go over 600,000. Now you've got Ed Gonzalez running for sheriff, and I think you may have a similar thing. And as Garcia had coattails, I think Gonzalez could have coattails.
You think?
Could be, but, you know, and, you know, getting back to the straight ticket, the people who vote for Trump are not necessarily straight ticket people.
Exactly.
Because he's been saying, you know, we got to break up this good old boys club where I'm the outsider in that. So even if Trump runs strong in Harris County, I don't know that he'll necessarily drag anybody along with him.
Well, and that's what I kind of see, is that Trump is the anti-establishment. And so regardless of whether he has an R by his name, he's clearly the anti-establishment because he's not the majority of Republicans' choice. And I mean, you've had both the Houston Chronicle and the Dallas Morning News, 2 historically conservative newspapers who have both backed Hillary Clinton, who have come out and endorsed her. I mean, that's pretty monumental. But you know, there's nobody, in my opinion, more establishment than Hillary Clinton is. And so I'm not sure that she can get a lot of people, because I think this is a very anti-establishment kind of year. And I think what's going on here locally is what you're seeing, you know, from the sheriff's office and now from the DA's office, is just, you know, kind of this same old same old establishment people trying to protect themselves kind of thing and look out for each other. And it's kind of failing, to be honest. I mean, our sheriff and our DA are at odds with each other pointing blame. So it's really starting to fall apart. But I'm not sure that either one of them can overcome some of this.
Well, and I think the city of Houston is suffering. And I'm thinking to myself, where's the mayor? I mean, shouldn't the mayor come in and at least try to clean some of this up, though?
He hadn't even appointed a full-time police chief.
Well, and this is what I'm saying. Where is
This
the mayor?
is the county. The mayor's got nothing to do
Well, but I mean,
And people forget, unincorporated is as big as the city of Houston anymore.
Right.
If unincorporated was a city, it'd be the size of Phoenix. So it's not like it used to be where you had 1.8 million in a city and 500,000 in a county. Now you got 2.2 million in a city and 2 million out in the county.
So do you think it falls on the county commission and the county commissioner's court to do something?
Falls on the commissioners.
Well,
I
agree,
mean,
yeah.
and it's just like Congress, they have the power of the purse. What I would actually, and when I was working in the sheriff's office, you're like, yeah, they need to consolidate everything under the sheriff. They need to do this and that. But, when you get away and you be more objective, for the most part, a lot of the things the commissioners do, they do right, whether it's parks, roads, or tollways. Imagine if they had not pushed those tollways in the early 80s where this county would be. I mean, you kind of like that they don't wait for somebody, the feds or somebody to come in, that they take care of stuff. And the stuff they're responsible for, they'll make their phone ring. They usually do a pretty good job on. I'd like to just see them go to Austin, get some legislation. First thing you got to do is break that jail off, either give it to the sheriff or create some type of county department of corrections. Nobody ever wants to fund it. Nobody ever wants to work it. And nobody cares. I mean, it's like I was talking to an investigative reporter because they have this thing. You get booked. Let's say you got $100 in your wallet, okay? They take the money. Now, it used to be that when you got out, they would either write you a check for that or they paid you. I mean, they actually had a little thing down there in booking called the bank, and they would give you your money back. You got booked in with $100, you got out. Now they put it on a debit card and it costs you $4.95 to get your money back. So first of all, and I called over to see if that was ever put on court agenda. It never was. So, and that started during Garcia. And, you wonder, where's that money going? And how are they allowed to charge people to get their own money back? But it's just, and I don't blame Hickman at all for that because, that thing is just, it's like trying to turn a tanker around a ship channel. It'll take him 3 or 4 years just to see everything he's got under him.
Well, and part of the problem with this too, I mean, and we talked about it last week, Julio, of course, now HPD is trying to gain control back of the crime scene unit from the Houston Forensic Science Center, which is supposed to be the new independent crime lab for the city. And HCCLA came out this week, issued a strong decree saying, no, we need to keep this independent. Hey, look, it's not perfect, but we need to really keep this independent. And going back to FESA work, I mean, we have one crime lab for the county, one crime lab for the city. We got people wrangling over. I mean, it's time to consolidate this, as you alluded to earlier, John. The city and the county are so big, and you've got so many agencies. It needs to be consolidated into one, and you need to have one crime lab for the entire county, the county and the city. I mean,
who's independent?
Who's independent?
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they're trying to do? But not independent, right?
Because everybody's got their territories. I mean, you think the Harris County Institute of Forensic Science wants to give up their position? And do you think the Houston Forensic Science Center wants to give up their? No, they're all fighting. And HPD's fighting to get a piece back. I mean, that's the problem we've got. And I think the solution is, at some point, I think you have to consider consolidating the city and the county into one, massive government, so to speak.
Well, I mean, they did it in Nashville, Tennessee, Davidson County and Nashville Road, Duval County, Florida, with Jacksonville and Duval County, Clark County and Las Vegas PD. And it's time to do it in Harris and Houston.
Yeah, because you end up with situations.
Harris County Law Enforcement or whatever, Houston Metropolitan Police Department, whatever.
And
that's the big fight right then.
Yeah.
Is what we're going to name it.
Well, and
Crush City PD.
But you have to eliminate problems like what happened in Precinct 4.
Right.
And if you get everybody on a standard page of how evidence is going to be booked, how it's going to be destroyed. You know, what is the process for cataloging and destroying evidence and making sure we retain all this? I mean, you can't have 9 or 10 different agencies, all with separate policies. I mean, you know, one of our viewers, when this all first broke, made the point, the constable's office, they were civil process servers. That was their original role.
Well, you know, when I was working for Neil McKay, he explained that to me. He said when Jack Hurd took over, Walter Rankin was $1 a year guy on the 3rd floor at 301. And he lived off his service fees on civil papers. And that Jack just wanted to do all criminal. He didn't want to do any civil. So he gave all that civil work to Walter Rankin. And he said, and within 5 years, Walter Rankin's having his fundraisers at the Astrodome. He said, because Sheriff Hurd didn't understand that was all your stroke. Where those businessmen needed a guy evicted or they needed that paper run that day. That's where you got your stroke. And then the constables became powerful politically from doing that stuff. And you know, what I didn't like about splitting off as that is, and what I alluded to earlier on the mail run, is you need those old man jobs. You know, a guy gets out here and he doesn't promote, but he gave you a good 20 years working the streets and that. You don't necessarily have to run him off or something. When you've got stuff like that, you go to other places and it's like, okay, now you're going to do civil stuff. You're going to be the bailiff in the JP court. You're going to, you know, some of those jobs where you can get another 5 or 10 years and have a decent pension. Mm-hmm. And so when you split all that stuff off the constable, you lost a lot of that stuff. So then, you know, you had guys 55 and 60 still out on the street. And I'm telling you, that's too tough. When I was a patrol sergeant, I called out a patrolman in that was about, he was over 50, and I called him in and I said, Lester, don't worry about writing tickets or arresting anybody. I'm not going to get on you about that. Just keep the calls caught up, write the reports. I said, I got all these kids, get out there and wrestle them gangbangers. And you need that, you know, but it is time to consolidate and get it all just one lab. And they are consolidating with the jail. You know, the city's finally closing their jail down, and you have direct booking. But what kills me is I had a guy I used to work with in Ohio, and he was a Dallas police officer. And we opened 1301 in 1981, and Dallas opened their jail in 1982. We had a sally port that you could hold 6 cars in. And if you've ever been down there by the jail on Friday night about 2 o'clock in the morning, patrol cars are lined up down the block trying to get in the sally port to unload. And then, you know, you go in there and they got the deputies doing the property. He showed me around Dallas. You pulled down in the basement of the Sterrett Criminal Justice Center. It was like a 100-car parking garage. They had a picket deputy there. You pulled down there. And then they had an ATM machine at booking. So if you got picked up on like highway patrol warrants and when you used to pick up people on highway patrol warrants, you could take them to stop and go and then make out a money order to Sergeant R1 in Kerrville, and then you released them. And they had an ATM machine booking where people could get the money and pay out on their tickets. And that was in 82. And you just sit there and go, why are we always reinventing the wheel? It's like every time we build a new substation, they'd let the captains and lieutenants design it. And there'd always be problems. You know, in Humble, we're getting a new substation. So right away, sheriff gets 50% and the constable gets 50%. Sounds fair, right? Well, the problem is the sheriff has a jail. So the jail took up 25% of the building. So now the sheriff, which actually had more people, had 25% of the building, and the constable had 50%. They had like lockers and stuff, and you know, we're all shoehorned in there on Friday night. You're looking for a place to sit to type a report.
Huh.
And they don't think, and you can download a blueprint of a model police station off the web from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, but we always want to reinvent the wheel.
And so you're saying the consolidation would help, is where it should go?
You need to consolidate, and you need to have an effective civil service where people feel that they can point out wrongdoing without risking their job. You know, I don't know that it needs to go as strange as some of the arbitration decisions I've heard come out of the city. But, I mean, these guys need to have some type of civil service protection. That was designed so that public servants would feel free to do their job and not be pressured to engage in misconduct or violate the laws.
John, what was the hardest part for you transitioning from being an officer for so long to becoming a criminal defense lawyer?
I don't know that it was really that hard because I always, I kind of always felt the battle for your liberties is not in Washington. It's long gone by the time they get to Washington. It's right here at the courthouse. And, I got a sense of history, and I transitioned pretty easy because I think you make a better policeman when you get, for lack of a better term, you get your ass kicked in court. I always said I never learned anything from a prosecutor holding my hand. I learned when a defense attorney beat me up. I was on a stand on a DWI, and I want to say it was Dan Gergen. Is that his name?
Gerson?
Yeah. And boy, he just pounded me. I mean, I got out of that witness stand, and you just felt like the jury was looking at you like, we pay this guy? So, but I made a note, and I remembered, okay, so next time I wrote a DWI report, it was that much better. And I had one poor trooper, I mean, I really gave him a bad time when we won the case. I felt so bad, I followed him out in the hall, and I said, Trooper, look, it's just business, but here's what you need to do. I said, first, there's two kinds of officers. Either the ones that get beat up in court and then they curl up and say, I'm never going to do it again, or the ones that say, well, he ain't ever going to get over me again. I'm going to beat him next time. I said, I think you're the kind that's going to rise a challenge, but these are the things we look for. These are the things you need to do. And so I always enjoyed that, and I kind of feel like I'm still training in a way.
We only got about a minute left here, but I would be remiss if I didn't plug your upcoming show.
Yeah.
Because in 1979, ladies and gentlemen, there was a song released called Video Killed the Radio Star, but not in the case of this guy, because starting next week, you are going to be a radio star.
Yeah, Joanne has set up something where we're going to have a
Joanne Music.
talk show. Yeah, my boss, Joanne Music and Earl Music, where we're going to have a talk show on KJOZ 880 AM every Thursday at 2 p.m. So we'll see how that goes.
Debuting next week, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right, on the 15th.
Do you have a name for the show yet?
No, we don't.
What stories at the courthouse?
I always say, look, I don't know everything, but I know my place. That's Joanne's.
You know the truth.
We want to know the name of the show as soon, and I'll make sure to text Joanne.
We'll kind of bounce that around the office, see what we can come up with.
That's all the time we have for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for joining us on another episode of Reasonable Doubt. I want to thank John Denholm for being our guest tonight. We appreciate you coming out, spending an hour with us, and dropping some knowledge on us. Yeah, and
Even
Julio.
if I missed the ball game.
I know, right?
Well,
Julio,
horns up.
same time next week, my friend. We will be back next Thursday night, 8 p.m. for another episode of Reasonable Doubt, ladies and gentlemen. Good night. See you next week.